Legacy. The long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc. that took place in the past or of a person's life. When you think about the legacy of certain anime characters, like let's say Goku, what comes to mind? For me, it's stuff like defeating King Piccolo, the instant transmission Kamehameha, or the first awakening of Ultra Instinct. Moving away from main characters, let's look at someone like Zoro. I can almost guarantee that most of you immediately thought of Nothing Happened, or more recently, his fight against King in episode 1062. Of course, these characters are not 100% good, but their legacies, the stuff people think about when these characters come to mind, is mostly, if not completely, positive. Example, Goku is now considered dumb by a large number of fans due to Dragon Ball Super's treatment of him, but he's still considered one of the greatest anime characters of all time. Now let's take a look at another character from One Piece, one that happens to be my favorite, but also one of the most flawed characters in the series. Mr. Prince, Soba Mask, Vince Smoke, Sanji. I think Sanji is an amazing character. Again, he is my favorite character in One Piece, but there's a tiny stain on his record, and by tiny, I mean it's as noticeable as coffee on a white shirt. I'm sure it's obvious that I'm talking about his character gag of perversion, a trope that exists throughout many anime within many characters. As someone who has watched a lot of anime, I've grown accustomed to this trope, and to be honest, I don't really care about it unless the character in question adds nothing to the story but the gag. For example, Mineta. What does he even do besides be a pervert? Now, I'm sure some of you are asking yourself, how does Sanji's perversion ruin his legacy, while someone like Jiraiya is regarded as one of the most beloved characters in Naruto, if not anime in general? And there's two parts to that answer. One, Sanji's perversion was not always a part of his character. And two, Sanji's perversion goes as far as fluencing entire plot points or even starting entire story arcs. Let's start with that first point. Sanji was not always a straight up pervert. From the moment he was introduced, Sanji was always presented as a gentleman at his most tame and a simp at his worst, and his gag was actually funny. Of course, there were a few times where he bordered into perversion, but he was never full on pervert. That is until Thriller Bark, when Oda introduces one of, if not the worst character in One Piece, Absalom. There are a good amount of characters that I don't like in One Piece, but none can even compare to the amount of hate I have for Absalom. Before Thriller Bark, Sanji was fine. Hell, he was almost perfect. He had good dynamics with every Straw Hat, making him an entertaining character no matter who he was paired up with, a very cool fighting style, and some of the most badass and cool moments in the series, especially during Alabasta, Water 7, Enies Lobby, and Skypiea. So it bothers me to no end that out of nowhere you take his endearing and funny gag and turn it into something that already starts out bad but only proves to get even worse as time goes on. We had never heard or even hinted that Sanji's dream was to get the clear fruit so he can spy in women's baths, and that's because it never existed. What do you mean you are the man who took away one of your dreams? This dream never existed in the first place. Moving past Thriller Bark and Absalom, the worst of Sanji as a whole comes in the Return to Sabaody and Fishman Island arcs respectively, and he becomes absolutely insufferable. I don't know what Mr. Eiichiro Oda was thinking when he came up with this, but it severely damages my enjoyment of this section of the story. If it's in the background, I'm usually able to ignore it, but for these two arcs, it's so in your face and literally impossible to ignore. It's also just disgusting and cringeworthy in every way possible. The entire Fishman Island arc happens the way it does because Sanji almost dies from a nosebleed. Unironically. Admittedly, Sanji becomes more tame as the post-time skip era goes on, but there's still stuff like his antics while he was in Nami's body in Punk Hazard, some stuff in Zou, and him sneaking into the woman's bath in Wano after he put on the raid suit. On the contrary, a lot of this disappears or just isn't as frequent in Whole Cake Island, which is undoubtedly Sanji's best post-time skip arc because his character gets to breathe here. When his gag isn't being shoved in our faces for laughs, Sanji is an extremely entertaining and amazing character to watch. Sanji in the later half of Onigashima puts up one of the greatest character performances in One Piece, especially in the anime, which makes it hurt even more that Toei also sees Sanji's gag as an opportunity for filler scenes. For example, episode 1016 contains a scene that not only wasn't in the manga, but almost completely contradicts Sanji as a character. For the unaware, Sanji gets caught by Black Maria after going to save a woman who he thought was going to have the sash on her kimono ripped off. I don't know if those are the correct terms, but bear with me. And this filler scene almost has him do the exact same thing he came here to stop in the first place. Fortunately, in the current One Piece arc, Egghead Island, Sanji is rather normal and gives us a bit more of that pre-time skip gag that still lingers within. He's rushing to Nami's rescue and fighting in the name of love, and it hurts to see that we could have had this Sanji all of post-time skip, but instead we got what we did. To address the title of this video, do I think Sanji's legacy is ruined by this gag? Well, no, I think by the end of One Piece, Sanji will still be a fan favorite as he is now, and will go down as one of the best written characters in the series, but it pains me that such a good character has such a massive stain on his legacy.
Lately I'm feeling so cool. Yeah. Come and get a taste of the hip soul food. Spice up the animal with neo haiku while Zoro goes to school where he slash kung fu.